like-minded group to go after and support kids, students, families impacted by disabilities in our churches, so that we can get them to church and be lifelong followers of Jesus. So we have various churches that are represented here today on this call, and we'll be able to have some time to ask questions and connect here. Would just love to take a second here and introduce everyone to Ryan. Ryan Wolfe is a president and executive director of Ability Ministry. It's a pretty friend. Ryan's passion is to equip and empower churches, organizations, and individuals to reach their disability communities for Jesus. Previously, before working for Ability Ministry, Ryan was a full-time disability pastor at First Christian Church in Canton, Ohio. He's also worked as a church consultant for Key Ministry. And then if you read the information leading into our meeting today, has done some work with Johnny and Friends as well. Which, as you all know, Johnny and Friends of Minnesota is our sponsor for Minnesota Disability Ministry Connection. So I'm just so excited and so grateful, Ryan, for your time and your availability to be here with us today. It's just such a gift to be able to hear from you and to be able to ask questions and all of those things. So I'd love to turn it over to you and just thank you so much for your time and availability and expertise. I'm just so excited to learn from you and hear from you today. So I'll turn it over to you.
All right. Excellent. Well, thank you for having me. I'm gonna share my screen. I just want to make sure everybody's seeing that. We're good. That's popping up for everybody. Okay. Excellent. So I am, I guess, calling this curriculum, adaptations, and more, because we're going to talk a lot about several different things. Most of it is kind of centering around the topic of curriculum because that's what I was asked to talk about. I did get a few questions ahead of time, and so I wanted to address some of those questions. I will address probably one of those in the midst of my presentation, and then as I'm wrapping up, I will actually shift gears and answer two of those other questions that are very similar. One of the things that came in ahead of time was how do we work with curriculum? How do we use curriculum when we have different things going on, whether we have kids with different diagnoses, ADHD? How do we make it all work? So I'm hoping that I'll be able to address some of that. I'm hoping that you'll be a little bit more familiar with Ability Ministry and some of the resources that we provide for churches by the time that we're done with this presentation, as well as I'll be kind of highlighting a bunch of different things that we use that you can use for free within your ministries. So let's jump right in. Okay. So let's see. All right. So I'd like to say that success with curriculum starts before you teach, and this goes so much deeper than just sitting down with the curriculum, reading it before you go to teach it. Um, as Carrie mentioned, I was a full-time disability ministry pastor at Canton, Ohio, and First Christian Church. Before I shifted into that role, I played the parts of being the children's pastor and the family pastor. So I wore a bunch of different hats at First Christian. And one of the things that I did at First Christian was I wrote all the curriculum for our children's ministry. And being over almost 200 different volunteers in our children's ministry, one of the things that I noticed was that the vast majority, I'd say probably in the ballpark of 75% of our volunteers, the first time they touched the curriculum was 5 minutes before the kids showed up. And I think anybody that's doing ministry has seen that, experience that. Maybe it's been you. Maybe it's been a busy week and you've just not had a chance to pick it up until 5 minutes before the kids get there. And I think we would all agree that that's probably not the most successful way that we're going to be using curriculum. Uh, Preparation is important, and I think we all know that. And but knowing that the vast majority of volunteers kind of come into it with very little preparation, kind of shaped the way that we develop our curriculum at Ability Ministry. Uh, we make it so it's easy to facilitate and not difficult to teach. And I think the important part there is the facilitation of a lesson. If you're recruiting people to be teachers, you're probably scaring them away if you're asking them to teach. But if you're asking them to facilitate a lesson with the slides, activities, and different things that we provide, I think people would be more open to that. And I think that that really is the case because a lot of people can stand up in front of others and facilitate a lesson by reading what's on the slides with very little preparation. So let's talk about some of the things that are necessary to be successful before you ever teach your curriculum. And this goes to, I think, addressing some of the things that you guys had questions for, like how do we adapt things to be able to make sure that we include all people, uh, regardless of what their diagnosis might be. The first thing we have to do is we have to know who we have, and that's why we've developed this information sheet. We have an information sheet for teens and adults. We have an information sheet for children. What you're seeing on the screen here is the version for teens and adults. But truly, knowing is half the battle. So if you don't know the kids that are coming into your room, you're already at a disadvantage. So this is an important part, I think, of very front end. This is tagged on to the registration process as kids or adults or teens are coming into your ministry. This is what hopefully they're doing before they show up in a pre-registration type of format, but at very least, they're doing this as they show up for the first time because you need to have information, right? You don't want to do things that frustrate someone just based on different things that you're not aware of. So the more you know, the more successful you'll be. So knowing's half the battle. Knowing what's going on and who's in your ministry. Uh, the other part of knowing is for those individuals in your ministry. If they don't know the rules of what's going on, they're going to test those limits. And even if they do know the rules, they may still test those limits. But I think it's important to have some classroom rules. Here's a template that we created for churches to use that they can print and just use as is, or they can create their own custom rules. This is obviously really good for children. This is something you can post in your classroom. This is also something that you can do with teens and with adults. When you're doing it with teens and adults, it's my recommendation that you allow the teens and adults to have some ownership in what those rules are. And you'll be surprised. Oftentimes, they'll create stricter rules than you might necessarily create as you're doing that. But if they know the expectations for them in the classroom, they're going to be more likely to be able to kind of follow along and to do the things that you're hoping that they'll do so you can be successful when you sit down to teach. Another thing that's also super important before you ever teach is helping people know what's the expectations for the day. We recommend in ministries, whether it be children's, teens, or adults, to have some type of schedule that you can do routinely. I think everybody, and this goes beyond just someone on the autism spectrum, someone with ADHD. This is just good for everybody, is to know what to expect, what's coming, what's next. That's really helpful, especially if you have someone that maybe struggles with one of these different areas. You can help get them more help in one of the areas that maybe they struggle with. But I think routine is important. You probably don't want to change up your schedule too drastically too often. So because when people know what to expect, I think they have a better way of being able to process and work through the morning. This again is a free resource on our website that you can download and use in your ministry. All right. And even if you do everything correctly, you have your classroom rules, you have your daily schedule, you have all the information about the children, teens, or adults that are coming into your ministry, we all know what happens in disability ministry. Nothing ever goes exactly as you plan it or want it to go. And sometimes that just happens because of what happened 5 minutes before the child, teen, or adult comes into your ministry, or that morning when they get up. It just may not be having it. We all have those mornings. Again, that's not specific to any diagnosis. We can all have a moment, and I think that's okay. But if you're not equipped to know what's going on, you're at a disadvantage. So this is something that probably works a little bit better in the area of children, especially if you're printing off this, again, a free resource on our website that you can have at your check-in desk as kids are coming in. You could say, "Hey, how are you feeling today?" And if they're able to answer you verbally, awesome. If they're just able to point to something on the chart, awesome. It gives you an idea of what's going on. Sometimes you don't have to have the chart to know exactly what's happening as the child's coming down the hallway. Uh, but again, knowing is half the battle. If you know your individuals in your ministry, you're going to be set up well to have success when it comes time to break out that curriculum and use it in your ministry. If you want to do this more on the teen and adult level, and you don't want to use the chart obviously because it's more geared towards children. My recommendation is if you're meeting around tables and you've got 6 to 8 seats at a table, make sure you have a leader at each table. And as people come and sit down, you ask them, how's it going today? How was your week? And I think you can get a pretty good vibe on how individuals are doing, and you'll tune in pretty quickly to who might need a little bit of extra attention or help on that given morning. So make sure that they and all those around them at the table can be successful. All right. So if you got an individual in your ministry that's just maybe not having it on the morning or just routinely kind of struggling to fall in line with the schedule that you've got weekly, one of the things that we recommend is to give those individuals choices. Um, if you can understand kind of what their preferences are, what they enjoy, what they're good at, how God has wired them, create choices and opportunities for them to engage and be successful. And that can look like a lot of different things. On the next screen, I'm going to show you a resource that we created specifically for this purpose. It's what we call our head coach resource. Again, it's free. You can download it on our website. But we developed this because one of the guys that's on my team, he also teaches in the teen ministry at his church, and he had one person that routinely was a handful. And for a while he got frustrated. He was like, "Oh my gosh, I can't get so and so to sit still. I can't get so and so to be quiet. I can't get so and so. I don't know if they're getting anything out of the lesson." And then what I think he found out was the frustrations were more on him because he wasn't able to integrate this teenager, uh, more so than it was on the teenager and the behaviors and different things that were going on in the class. So we brainstormed and we actually came up with this resource, and this has worked perfectly in this ministry where they have teenagers in a class on a Sunday morning. The head coach resource is just that. You select someone to be the head coach for the morning. And you can see in the graphic there are yellow penalty flags. I so love this because the child that you pick to be the head coach has the opportunity to select other people. You can see, obviously, welcome and worship, memory verse review, video or lesson time, group discussion, an activity, praise and prayer requests, closing prayers. The head coach gets to select his staff or her staff to do these tasks. So the head coach is going around the classroom asking people who wants to participate on a given day, signing up people to be in charge of these different things. So someone's in charge of doing the welcome, someone's in charge of helping with worship time, someone's in charge of doing the memory verse review, someone's in charge of all the different things on your list, on your schedule. So the head coach is doing that, and the head coach's responsibility is to make sure everyone else is staying in line. So this is a perfect opportunity, especially for maybe some of those kids or teens that have trouble keeping themselves in line. What if instead of you spent all your energy to keep them in line, you put them in charge of keeping everyone else in line? It may not work for everybody, but it has worked perfectly in a lot of different situations we've seen. The penalty flags are really cool. So someone gets out of line or you get off schedule time wise, the head coach for the day can throw a penalty flag and can get people back on track, or can ask for help or say, hey, we're behind schedule. Just a fun way to give away some leadership and some responsibilities. I think oftentimes if we empower people rather than um, try to make them fit the molds that we have for people, we have more success. Empower people, give them responsibilities, rather than trying to get them to fit the mold that we think that they should be in. Again, this goes back to knowing preferences, knowing gifting, knowing the individual. The more you know these things, the better you can position them for success. So that's an example of something that we have used. All right, so let's talk about curriculum. Let's talk about some teaching tips. Let's talk about, uh, let me give you a little bit of a look behind the curtain as to how we develop our curriculum and ability ministry for churches to use. As I'm writing the curriculum, I'm always, always, always thinking about how people learn. Okay. Um, I think we all understand, when it comes to retention, if we're sitting in a worship service, and a preacher gets up and speaks for 45 minutes and never uses a visual, simply lectures and does the best job that he or she can do, you're probably not going to walk away remembering the majority of what is said. In fact, if we understand the learning pyramid and retention rates, lecturing, the style of teaching, lecturing, which is most sermons that you sit through, people will retain less than 10% of what is said. So if you're going to walk away with maybe the 3 points that are given, or maybe the 1 point that is given, that's probably about it for success rates. We understand that this is not the best. This is probably the worst way to teach. So we don't design our curriculum and our lessons to be lecture in style. uh, People will remember or retain 10% of what they read. So that's an important piece of all of our curriculum. All of our curriculum has Bible verses on screens that people can read. And we think it's important to always have that as a visual and as an opportunity for people to engage in the lesson by reading. People will retain or remember 20% of what they hear and see. So, again, understanding this, we always create our curriculum and our lessons with audio and visual. We have a memory verse video that is inserted into every single lesson that we create. So people are seeing that, they're hearing that, and they're having an opportunity to engage in that. We have two different styles of curriculum. One is PowerPoint driven, where everything is available on the slides for you. And then we have one that is video driven. And that's where someone else will teach the lesson for you. And then you'll use a companion PowerPoint piece to facilitate discussion activities based on the video that you watch. So 20% of people what they hear and see, they'll retain. 30% retention rate for demonstration. So these are your object lessons, these are your activities. And one of the things that we work into every single lesson is either a group game or activity. And because we understand that when people are seeing something demonstrated or they're participating in it, better chance that they're going to remember what they do. Uh, People will remember 50% of what they discuss. This is another important component of every single lesson that we create. We have discussion questions throughout the lesson on the PowerPoint slides. So essentially, you can just read the question and allow people to answer. And at the end of every lesson, we also have some summary questions, like 3, maybe 4 at the most, summary questions at the very end of every lesson. So people, when they're engaged in discussion, will remember 50% of what they discuss. 75% retention rate when people are practicing doing. I'll go back to another example, the sign language memory verse that is built into every presentation, whether it be PowerPoint driven or video driven styles of curriculum. People are practicing memorizing scripture using sign language. And we'll actually do that together here in just a second. But the more that you engage people in doing, the more that they're going to remember. And here's the last one. People will remember 90% of what they teach others. All right. So, as much as you can turn over the curriculum, the lessons to individuals, the more that they're going to have a chance to remember what's going on for the day. So, it might be that you're empowering someone within your group to do a drama. So they're teaching an important piece of the lesson using drama. There's sometimes that we build that into the lesson as the activity for the day. But again, as the more that you turn things over to people, the more that they're going to retain. And when we create curriculum, we're always thinking of the learning pyramid and how can we engage on multiple levels. As far as our curriculum goes, I think I've mentioned some of these already, but there's 5 typical components to every one of our lessons. You have some form of game or group activity. That's one. Second, you have a memory verse that people practice in learning using sign language. Third, there is a Bible lesson. It's either taught through the PowerPoint slides, the verses and the questions that are on there, or it's taught by video if it's a video driven lesson. There are always discussion questions again throughout and at the end. And the fifth and final component that is in every single lesson of our curriculum is a prayer time. We believe very much in the power of prayer. And we also believe that people need to practice praying. Prayer is something that I think people get uncomfortable with at times because they don't know what to say or they don't think they have the words to say. That's why at the end of every lesson, we have 3 prayer prompts. The first one is directed to giving thanks to God. The second prayer prompt is directed at praying for God to help you with whatever has been learned and to be applied. The third prayer prompt at the end of every lesson is praying specifically for someone else and based that prayer on whatever is learned throughout the lesson. So those are the 5 components of what is in every lesson that we create. All right, so let's talk about some teaching tips, and these will help when it comes to engagement. These will help when it comes to reducing behaviors. And I think a lot of these are obvious, but I think sometimes it's just good. It's good to review these. So again, remember, top of the pyramid, never lecture. You know, if you're creating a lesson and all you're doing is talking at people, people probably aren't going to remember over 90% of what you say, and you'll have an increased chance of having behaviors in your group. The second thing, when it comes to being successful in teaching and using curriculum, ours or any other, is never take yourself too seriously. The more humor that you can interject into your lessons, the more you can laugh at yourself, the more relatable you become. So I would always encourage you, no matter what you're teaching on, think of an example in your life, a story that you can tell that will help people understand. And if you can laugh at yourself, that's awesome. If you can get people to laugh, they will engage at a much higher level. Um, Even if you don't feel like you can tell jokes, like you're not a good joke teller, somebody puts you on the spot and says, "Hey, tell a joke." I wouldn't do well with that. But again, with a little preparation, uh, everybody can tell a dad joke. You can come up with, you know, top 10 dad jokes just by looking online, and you can tell a bad joke, and by the fact that it's a bad joke, you can get people to engage and laugh. So never take yourself too seriously. Make sure to have fun. Disability ministry, in my opinion, is the most fun ministry possible. So if you're not having fun, something's probably wrong. All right. Number three, never dumb down the message. And this will go to one of the questions that was asked beforehand. I'll try to address it here in this section. One of the things that I always encourage people to do is to always assume competence. All right. Too many times I hear people say, "Oh, well, so and so has the cognitive level of this," and they'll never understand. And when we do that, we put limits on people, and that honestly is frustrating to me. I think we should always assume competence. If you're going to say we're going to teach at this level or this level, uh, always teach at this level. People will catch more than you will ever give them credit for. If you teach at this level, you're gonna have people that won't engage that need it up here. So if you're saying, "Hey, where are we teaching? We're gonna teach up here. We're gonna assume competence." People are gonna people are gonna understand more than we give them credit for. Uh, and something that you can do if you have a wide array of of ability levels, and you're kind of scared. You've got a larger group, and you got kind of people that are up here and and here, and you're not sure what to do. One of the best ways that you can ensure that people are tracking with the lesson and engaging with the lesson is by meeting around tables. And now I don't know what everyone's room and setup looks like, but I'll give you an example. In our ministry at First Christian Church, I still teach on Sunday mornings. About every third month, I'm in a rotation of teachers, and in our adult class, we have on average between 80 and 100 adults that come every Sunday morning. And we've had to take over the fellowship hall at our church because it's the only room big enough to to put 100 adults with different levels of intellectual and developmental disabilities. And we have one teacher, but we have anywhere between 12 and 15 round tables in our fellowship hall. One of the things that we are super intentional about is making sure that every one of those round tables has an adult leader sitting at that table. That adult leader will act as the person that's kind of leading some of the discussion around the tables, checking in with the individuals, making sure they're tracking, helping people open their Bibles, helping people find the appropriate passages in their Bibles, assuming people bring Bibles anymore. Always encourage people to bring Bibles. I think it's a super important thing to do. So have a table leader that's in charge of five, six, seven people, because the person, if once your group gets really large, the person that's teaching or facilitating the lesson can't have that personal touch with everyone. But if you have a table leader that's in charge of six or seven other people, they can handle keeping people on track, answering questions, assisting with finding things in Bibles. Um, I think that's super important. Another thing that's super important when it comes to making sure you're hitting everybody on all those different levels is using the right translations. Um, my recommendation, and in the translations that we use in our curriculum, we always use the NIRV. That's the New International Reader's Version. We use the ERV. That's the Easy to Read version. Occasionally, I'll use the ICB, the International Children's Bible version, and I'll use this with adults. And you might say, well, it's for kids. Well, yes and no. Those three translations are all three written at a third grade reading level. And I think if we're all honest, sometimes we need that that level to best understand sometimes what we're reading in the Bible. So if you use any of those translations, if you have a set of Bibles that you have available in your classrooms, whether it be children, teens, or adults, make sure you got one of those three translations because it's going to be easier for them to use. Someone that's sitting down with, I don't want to pick on necessarily a translation because you might be one of your favorite translations, but for example, like if you use like um, the King James version of the Bible is written in a type of language that nobody uses when they're speaking. So it's harder for someone to understand when they're reading something that they don't hear people typically using. So make sure you use the right translation of Bibles, and then make sure you're using multiple forms or styles of learning and engagement, because not everybody learns the same way or the best way for them. So if you're using multiple different forms of engagement, people will be more likely to catch and track with you wherever you're at. I'll talk a little bit later about some of the other specific questions when it comes to talking about adult content, sex, different things like that. I'll talk about that at the end because I've got a few different resources that I want to share with you on that. But always assume competence. If you're teaching anywhere, teach up here. People catch more than they are given credit for. Make sure you have leaders around tables that can help and assist because if you're up front teaching and you have to run down and help somebody kind of thumb through their Bible to get to the right place, chaos is going to break out. You need to have those people that are around that can help with those things as you are teaching. Number four, always use visuals. Our curriculum is 100% digital. It's meant to be used with PowerPoints, whether it be Pro Presenter. Um, it's meant to be seen because when people see things, they engage better. We already proved that with the learning pyramid, and then the activities oftentimes will be very engaging, whether it be with pictures or different things that people see and be able to interact with. Always engage the audience with active learning. Again, every lesson that we create has either a game or an activity in it that people can engage with and practice doing. You know, the sign language mat reverse, again, another example of that. And then here's another one that may seem odd to you, especially if it's, you know, especially if your group's pretty small. But I always encourage people use a microphone when you teach. And I know some people will say, well, I have a, you know, a voice that projects. Great. That's fine. Most people don't. And if you look in classrooms in public schools, most teachers are wearing a necklace that has a microphone on it and having their voices projected throughout the classroom. If you have someone that struggles to hear, um, they will do better if you're using a microphone and your voice is projected. Even if you are in a small classroom, I would encourage you to use a microphone. There is something about a person holding a microphone that again draws attention. It gives you a sense of authority because you're holding a microphone or using a microphone. And it can be used as a potential reward for people as you ask for volunteers. You might say, hey, uh, can you come up here and read the Bible verse for us? Everybody likes to hear their voice in a microphone. The struggle would be for some of those people that just want to scream in it, but you'll have to police that. But using a microphone is powerful and can drive engagement and keep people on task. All right. So, what can we do with curriculum? This will kind of talk to adaptations, additions, things that you can do along with whether it be our lesson or anybody else's curriculum that you use. The examples that I'm going to give are going to be for a series of lessons that we created on the story of Noah called Second Chances. So, all the examples of different things that we can add, um, I will give you some ideas of different things you can do. And if you like some of these ideas, again, we've created a resource called Fun Time Fillers that you can download for free. I'll give you a QR code at the end where you can download those. So some of these ideas that I'll share here, um, you can immediately implement into your ministry. So imagine we are teaching a lesson on the story of Noah in this series called Second Chances. Let's talk about some additional things that you can do with the curriculum that will definitely drive engagement. All right. One of the first things that I recommend that everybody does, if you're using PowerPoint, like you can see in the presentation today, is use live subtitles for your presentation. It's pretty accurate. It's, I think, gotten better. And if you're looking for how to do that, in the bottom left-hand corner, when you're using PowerPoint, this little icon that kind of looks like a laptop is all you have to click. You click on that. As long as you have a newer version of PowerPoint, it will give you live subtitles. This is super helpful. In our classroom where we have 80 to 100 adults, there are two or three people that if we don't use these live subtitles, they won't engage at all because they need the subtitles. Also, it's again another fun way to keep people's attention because sometimes people in our group like to see what they say, when they're talking, when they have their opportunity to read or ask questions or lead activities, they like to see their words on the screen. And they also like to see if the subtitles get it wrong. So they're really dialed in. They're listening to what you say and they're watching what you say using the subtitles. So it's a great way to drive engagement and to keep people on task. All right. Another thing, I've mentioned this before, so I won't take a ton of time on this, but use sign language. And you could say, well, I don't know sign language. Well, I don't know a ton of it either. Like I couldn't probably carry a conversation on beyond some of the basics. But if you use our curriculum, you don't have to be a sign language expert. You just have to play the videos and learn the sign language with the people that are engaging in the lesson with you. So, for example, in this series called Second Chances, the memory verse for this series is Genesis 6:9. He, being Noah, walked with God. So throughout the entire series, we're talking about what does that mean? What does it mean to walk with God? Because he walked with God and God was pleased with him. So every week you work on memorizing Genesis 6:9 in sign language. So let me teach you real quick. And I know you have your cameras turned off, and that's fine. But I'll trust that you are practicing with me. Okay. So the sign language for walked, if you kind of make your hands kind of go like this, imagine they're your feet. All right. So, and you're walking. All right. So he walked. All right. So practice that with me. He walked. All right. The sign for with, kind of making two fists. Your thumbs are up. You're bringing your hands together with. All right. That's a sign for with. Sign for God. You're making one straight hand here and you're kind of tracing it down the middle of your face. That is the sign for God. All right. Sign for God. So let's all practice that together. And again, I can't see you, but I'm trusting that you're doing this. So Genesis 6:9. He walked with God. All right. Super simple. Our sign language memory verses, if it's a long verse, we'll condense it down and we'll always remember or work on memorizing two, three, or four words within the verse. But a great way to keep people engaged, to teach them God's word. And you as you go along from week to week, you get better and better with the memory verses, and you ask people to come up and share their sign language skills with everybody. And it's a great time. Probably the feedback that we get the most about our curriculum, the thing that people love the most, are the sign language memory verses, because people love to engage in God's word, memorizing it. And again, when you're actively doing it, retention becomes much more likely. All right, so some other things that are in our curriculum with almost every one of our series, with the exception of the ones that we first created all the way back in, oh gosh, 2017, 2018. We have a word search and a coloring page for when it comes to the adult curriculum. For the children's curriculum, we have a coloring page for each of the lessons. Here's again examples from the Noah series. Coloring pages and word searches aren't for everybody, but some people it's super helpful for. So if you got somebody that maybe has ADHD, has trouble sitting still, if you're putting something in their hands that they can actively work on, it will help them to stay engaged. So maybe it's coloring, maybe it's doing the word search. And even if you're not using it within your actual programming time, a great idea is to use it as a follow up. Send people home with either or both. Give them the choice to pick up one or the other or both. Encourage them to do it during the week because it'll remind them of what they've learned. All right. So, another great way to kind of adapt and add to what you're already doing. Another example of things that you can do to add to adapt a lesson. And again, I'm using a ton of different examples. You obviously wouldn't use all of these in one lesson. You maybe pick one. But Legos are great, not only for kids, but also for adults. One of the things that I have when I teach occasionally, I have a huge, and I mean huge, Rubbermaid bin full of Legos. So I'll bring it in, and before I teach, I'll open it up and I'll spill the entire bin of Legos across the stage, and people will know. All right, it's this week we're gonna work on building something that has to do with the lesson. So I'll encourage two people to come up and to build, for example, build their best arc, and I'll just have them build while I'm teaching, and it's not a distraction for me. It's fun for them. It's fun for the class again to watch them as they're building their arcs. At the end of the lesson, you give them an opportunity to show off their arcs, to vote on who has the best arc. Um, Remember that whenever you vote on something in your ministry, everyone always wins. Figure out a way to make sure everybody's rewarded, because you don't want to add issues to your morning. So that's a great adaptation, something you can do to add to your lessons. Another version of that is to have an artist showdown. Occasionally, I'll bring in two art easels and put just a piece of poster board up on the easel. I have a bunch of different markers. During this lesson, you can say, "Hey, I want you, as I'm teaching, to draw your best global flood with Noah's Ark floating safely on top." People will take as much time as they want to do that, and it's a great again addition to your lesson to get engagement going. Real quick story: I actually did this activity during the Noah lesson that I taught last time. I taught this series at my church, and there was a girl that was sitting at the front round table, and I noticed like she had tears in her eyes, and she was sitting by herself. And I sat down and talked with her, and I said, "Hey, what's going on?" And we went through the different things that she was struggling with, and I knew that I was going to be doing this art showdown as part of my lesson. Of course, nobody else knew that at the time because class hadn't started. And I said, "Hey, do you like art?" And her face lit up. This is one of those Holy Spirit things. I couldn't have planned this. The Lord knew that she needed this morning, and she's like, "I love art," and she pulled out her smartphone and she said, "Can I show you my art?" And I didn't even know she was into art. until I had this conversation with her, and she starts flipping through her smartphone, showing me all the different artwork that she had done because she would take a picture of everything that she ever created. And I said, you know what? I have the perfect thing for you. During my lesson today, I need you to create the best creation that you can. With the lesson that we were doing, and it completely turned her morning around. And again, it wasn't anything that I necessarily did. The Lord obviously orchestrated that because He knew that she needed that. But again, that little extra step that you take, your preparation, God can and will use. So that's just another example of things that can be done. Another, again, adaptation to that, variation of that, you can use pipe cleaners. I personally like wiki sticks better than pipe cleaners. But if you got people that are pretty active, they need something in their hands. Again, going along with this story, the story of Noah, I would encourage people, all right, we know that the animals went two by two on the ark. So I want you to make as many different animals as you can with the pipe cleaners or wiki sticks while I'm teaching. At the end of the class, I'm going to give you time to show off all the different animals that you've made. Again, it's a great way. Keep people's hands busy, keep them engaged with the lesson, what's going on. Another way that you can do this, and these are different things that I think every classroom should have. They should have a bin of Legos. They should have a bin of Scrabble tiles. They should have a bin of wiki sticks or pipe cleaners. Just have them on hand. So if you want to pull these things out, you can do them at any time. For those individuals in your ministry that are good with spelling, with words, there are some people that are really, really good with spelling, and they do like words. So have your bin of Scrabble tiles and your display stands, and allow them or instruct them. Hey, as I'm teaching, I want you to spell out something that you learned from today's lesson. It could be one word, could be a phrase, and then when we're done, I'm going to give you an opportunity to share that. Again, you're giving them something to engage with, to use their hands with, and their minds with as they're working, as you're working through the lesson. That's always a good one as well. Um, Another thing that I think every teacher should have, and I actually have two of these. I have a super small treasure chest, and then I've got a much, much bigger one. I've got it right next to me, a much bigger one. I think you can see it there. So, um, a great way to keep people's attention is to bring in a treasure chest and set it in front of you, and don't tell people what's in it. Instantly, people will buzz and want to know what's in the treasure chest. What's in the treasure chest? When can I open it? Can I open it? And you'll have this instant engagement in your teaching, in your lessons, no matter what you're teaching on. So specifically, I did do this during this series as well. For the last lesson in the series, when I was teaching on God's promises, I had two things in the treasure chest, and I said two things. One you'll get now, and one you'll get later if everyone listens and participates in the lesson. So again, you're dangling the carrot. You're saying, hey, if we can all work together, we'll get to open the treasure chest at the end or at a certain point in the lesson. Um, so during this series, I had two different things in the treasure chest. I had them, positioned so you couldn't see the second thing. But the first thing in the treasure chest that we opened, well, let me tell you, because you want to give people the opportunity to open the treasure chest, and obviously everyone's going to want to open the treasure chest. So I always have with me a giant coin. All right. This coin used to be a chocolate coin, all right, that you can buy anywhere, any candy store. Um, but obviously chocolate melts and you don't want everybody handling chocolate. So I ate the chocolate. And I put inside of this, again, just a foil thing. I cut out a piece of wood and glued the foil around the piece of wood. So what I would do if we have something where we could only have one person do it, like open the treasure chest, is I'll tell people, show me heads or tails. So they're putting their hand on their tails, they're behind. I say, give me heads or tails, and I'll flip the coin. So I say, if you had heads and it was heads, you're still in it, and you kind of whittle it down to one person, and they get to open up the treasure chest. So that way, it's not, oh, it's not fair. You always pick so and so. No, it's just whoever won the coin toss to make it fair. So the one thing for now in this lesson, when I opened it up, I had pre-made uh, little individual baggies of Skittles, one of every color of the rainbow. And I had pre-printed off a verse talking about how God always keeps his promises in the baggie. So they got the one thing now. It was the Skittles. I said, hey, you can keep these as a reminder, or you can eat them and keep the paper as a reminder that God always keeps his promises. And I said, if you stay with me, if you participate, if we all work together, I have one more thing to give you in the treasure chest. So uh, at the end of the lesson, I would say, "Hey, does anybody have a guess what's in the treasure chest?" And I worked it up. I said, it's a special gift for everyone. So I made sure to have enough for everybody. And you do the coin thing again. You get somebody else to open up the treasure chest and to help pass them out. The things that was in the treasure chest was actually these magical rainbow glasses, and bought these off of Amazon. So super cheap, even though I had to buy 100 of them for my class. They're like 20 or 30 cents a piece. So a good investment, because when you put them on and you look up at the lights, you see rainbows. And so I wanted to tell people, God's promise for us, he put the rainbow in the sky to remind us that he would never, destroy the earth again with a flood. So the rainbow is a reminder of God's promises. So they could see that, and they could take that with them, which I thought was a really, really neat takeaway. Anytime you can give people a takeaway, I would recommend, if you can figure it out. Obviously, this series works really well, talking about the rainbows. But if you can think of one takeaway at the end of each series, so once every 4 weeks, you're giving somebody a takeaway. And it can be something super cheap like that, a bookmark, a lot of different things. A great way to help people stay engaged and want to know, and not want to miss, the week that you're going to give that takeaway. At the end of the lesson or throughout the lesson, you can do some review questions, make it a game. In front of me, I have a tiny dice, or you call it a die, right? If it's one. But usually when I go teach, I have a one that's like this big. It's like huge. So give people an opportunity to roll the giant dice or die, and whatever number it lands on is the review question that they have to answer. So it's a fun way, again, to keep people engaged with the lesson. Another version of that is like a tic-tac-toe version. You can split people up into teams, boys versus girls, however you want to do it. And as you answer the question correctly, if you answer it correctly, you get to add the X or the O. A couple different variations of this that is fun. Um, you can do it on like a giant window or a whiteboard, and you can throw like the sticky, like any type of sticky thing that can hit the target. If you got individuals that aren't able to maybe throw something sticky, grab some duct tape and make a huge duct tape tic-tac-toe board on the floor. So that way, if someone can only drop a tic-tac-toe piece for their team, that way you can do it on the floor. So again, a great way to do some of the review questions is to make it more engaging, to keep people's attention. That's another fun way to do it. So those are probably 10 different examples of different things that you can do with curriculum, with ours, or with any curriculum really, to make it more engaging. All those things, plus some extras, are on a one-page document that we created called Fun Time Fillers. And if you scan the QR code there, we have, I think, 33 one-page documents right now that you can download all for free. The Fun Time Fillers is one of them. All you have to do is scan that QR code there. It'll take you to the one-page docs there. If you want to see a free sample of our curriculum, you can uh, scan that QR code. And we have some free lessons, like single lessons. We have a devotional series that you can download that functions similar to our curriculum and can be expanded into a curriculum series. So if you're interested in seeing like and downloading either of the styles, the PowerPoint driven or the video driven, you can download some samples and check those out. Just scan that QR code and it'll take you to that page. If you're not able to scan that right now, don't panic. All you have to do is go to abilityministry.com. In the top right hand corner of the website, there's a little button that says I want to. If you click on that, one of the 3 or 4 choices there is download free samples of curriculum, so you can easily grab it there. So I mentioned that there were a couple questions that were submitted ahead of time. 2 of the questions were very similar when it had to do with um, addressing adult content, the topic of sex. How do you do that in a way that is both honoring of the individual's and family values, or lack of interest, or innocence of the individual? Those are some of the words in the questioning. So I want to point your attention for just a moment. In just a second, I'll stop the share here, and I know there's a bunch of stuff that has come up in the chat, and we'll take time for questions. But I want to kind of address this question with some of the resources that we have available for you, because um, individuals with disabilities and individuals without disabilities, we're all the same, really. We're more alike than different. And our individuals in our ministries have hormones just like we do, and we want to equip them with the truth that's in God's word. But sometimes it's it's sensitive, or it may not be appropriate for everybody, or there might be an individual who has a parent that says, hey, I don't want my child to participate in that conversation, or they have no interest in it, or that's not even on the radar. So how do you approach that? All right, so here's what I would say. You see this a lot in uh like youth ministry. So like, for example, in the youth ministry at my church, I've got 2 teenagers in the youth ministry. I got a 15 and a 17-year-old, so 2 high schoolers. um so we have high school kids, we have middle school kids. Sometimes youth pastor will talk about stuff to our high school kids that maybe not appropriate or on the right level for a middle schooler. So what do? They separate the group into 2 different groups. And that's an approach I think you can take when it comes to these different adult topics, where if you're talking about sex, if you're talking about romantic relationships, I think one of the things that you can do is have that similar approach where you say, okay, who wants to know more about this? Um, Today, we're going to split our group up. And again, this is dependent on you having enough leaders to do that. So you've got certain material that you're using with the group that's interested in it, and other material for the group that maybe is not interested in it. I think that's one great way to do that. Another way that you should always do, and the way you've probably seen sometimes in children or youth, is if you know that you're going to be talking about one of these subjects ahead of time, you're not waiting till the morning of to try to flag down a parent or a guardian or a staff member to say, "Hey, we're talking about sex today. Um, is that okay, or is that going to be offensive or concerning?" You're going to do that ahead of time. You're going to do that a week or 2 or 3 or 4 weeks ahead of time, saying, "On this date, we're talking about this subject because we need to talk about this. The church needs to address this. The church can't be silent on this. These are important truths that everybody needs to have. So on this date, we want you to be aware, because that gives people an opportunity to say, okay, on this date, A, maybe I'm not going to come, or B, I'm looking for an alternative, because again, maybe you're splitting your group up and offering 2 things that day." Or it gives people an opportunity to say, "Oh my gosh, so and so needs to hear this, so I'm going to invite extra people to come to it." And so I think that's a good option as well, informing people ahead of time, splitting up the group on a Sunday morning, or offering it as an elective seminar for a Saturday or a Wednesday night, where only the people that are interested are going to come to hear this content. So let me talk a little bit about the content itself, and then like I said, I'll stop the share, and we can kind of move into a time of questions. One of the things that we really recently created were one-page documents. Again, if you scan that QR code, you'll get these two. We created a one-page document, so front and back, healthy sexuality and Christian singles, and we created a one-page document, healthy sexuality in romantic relationships. So these documents don't share opinions, all right? Because what I think, what you think, isn't relevant necessarily. It just shares what the Word of God says on these topics, and because the Word of God is the final word. So if our opinions don't line up with the Word of God, then the problem's with us, not with the Word of God. So we want to equip people with the tools necessary to live healthy and productive lives, even in their sexuality, because our individuals with disabilities, again, or like than different, they have the same desires that we often do. So we want to give them the tools necessary. We want to give you the tools necessary as a leader leading these discussions. Those two handouts will be great for that. We have created a curriculum series called More Than Friends. All right, it's essentially a 5-week series talking about God's plan for our lives, specifically to romantic relationships leading up to marriage. And I know marriage is again is a tricky thing in the disability community, especially if two individuals have benefits. Oftentimes, the fear is if you actually legally get married, then one person loses their benefits. That's not always the case, but it often can be the case. So, a lot of complicated things there. But the More Than Friends series takes a look at some of these Bible verses and concepts that are on these one-page documents that you can have kind of at the ready when you're engaging in some of these conversations. So, but that series again, it might not be for everybody, but it could be taught with everyone. I actually taught this series with my whole group of adults, and but I addressed the fact that I said, hey, this isn't necessarily for you right now, but one day you may be in a romantic relationship, and we want you to be equipped to have a relationship that brings honor to God. And some of the things that we'll talk about today will, add to that. So those are a couple of the resources we have. The More Than Friends series is a curriculum series that you can purchase. The one-page documents on healthy sexuality are free. To let you know, we are going to be doing a podcast episode in April discussing sexuality in the disability community. So look for that. In April, we'll be going to some pretty deep levels on topics on that. We'll be highlighting some of these resources and some of the future resources that we're going to create around the subject, because we recognize there's not a lot out there that talks about it, especially within the light of what's God's plan for it, what are the healthy boundaries that God has set up for us, that type of thing. So I've done lots of talking. I've seen the chat. Looks like it has 7 things in it. I've not had a chance to look at that. So I am going to stop the share there and maybe turn it over to Carrie for maybe some navigating some of the questions, and I'll do my best to answer some of those. If you guys want to put your cameras back on and prove to me that you're not asleep, I'm just kidding.
Oh
It
my,
proved to me that you're still there through all of that, because that was a lot to go through pretty quickly. I'd love to answer whatever questions you have
it was
today.
all so great, so wonderful, Ryan. Thank you so much. I did
Okay.
write out the questions for you too, 2 questions specifically, and there were some comments off of the questions. But one was on the learning pyramid, and a question of if that learning pyramid is for all ages. And then the second was on the treasure chest that you had referenced. Is that something you always give something to everyone that's in participation, or is that something that you utilize in just a lesson to show the participants? So those are the 2 big questions that came through.
Okay. So the learning pyramid comes from the National Training Laboratories in Bethel, Maine, and I believe that would be for for all age groups. I would have to go back to that resource to double check that, but I think we can all agree, or maybe some of you may disagree with that, but I, I I can't find any argument in an age group benefiting more or less from the learning pyramid. But again, I can double check that and see what age groups were used in that study. The treasure chest can be used in a million different ways. It can be something that houses in it something for everybody, or it can be just your prop for your object lesson that doesn't go home with anyone but you because it's your prop. So yeah, there's so many different ways that you can do it. The whole idea of it though is like this is it, man. Like this is like the point of my lesson. This is what you can't miss. This is what we're working towards. It's again, it's in addition to what you're doing in your lesson, whether it's our curriculum or somebody else's curriculum, that you can easily use. This little guy here, again, super small, but cost me like $9 at Michael's. So you can grab one on Amazon, I'm sure. Um, but yeah, for like $9 to have a prop that's going to keep everybody's attention whenever you bring it in, because they don't know what's going to be in it because it's different every time you bring something in. It is a powerful thing, and sometimes if somebody gets something that they can take home with them, um, it's kind of that intermittent reinforcement that becomes addictive. Sometimes they get something to take home, sometimes they don't. But yeah, use it. Um, I wouldn't use it every week, obviously. Use it sparingly, so it's important and special when it does show up. I think it can be such a great tool for you. Other questions?
So good. And then also just to note in the chat, there was a question, Ryan, as you were talking about the three types of translations that you
Okay.
use, that you and your team use when you write curriculum. Just because the chat features don't show up in the recording for people that might be watching this recording
Sure.
later, Ryan mentioned the NIRV translation, the ERV, easy to read translation, and the ICB, International Children's Bible. So
And,
if you
and
happen to be catching this,
yeah,
yeah,
I'd
go ahead.
love to. I'd love to show people, because obviously these are all children's. They're written at third grade level. They're all children's kind of translations. I had an individual that actually found. I think his isn't. I think his he got found an ERV at like the Goodwill, and he brought it in, and he's like, I love it. He said, "There's only one problem. It has a kid's cover on it." And he's like, he's an adult. He doesn't want a kid's cover on his Bible. And he's like, are there covers I can buy for it? And I'm like, yeah, absolutely. There's so many different creative ways that you can cover a Bible with duct tape, or like back in school with the old paper, the paper bag that you would cut up and do that and design things on it. Here's my recommendation. This Bible here is the NIRV Kids Adventure Bible. Um, but you can buy a leather, see, you can see the Kids Adventure Bible there. If you buy the leather cover, it looks like any other adult Bible. And that helps to kind of bridge that, oh my gosh, I'm an adult. I don't want a kid's Bible. But yet the Bible will, it has the language of the third grade reading level. It has, special call out questions in it. It has activities in it. It has, different things that people can work on memorizing. Then it's so good. It's my favorite. But yeah, get the one with the leather cover for adults because it'll help them feel like they're adults, because they are adults and they don't want to walk around with a kid's Bible. Other questions? I know I tried to touch a lot of different topics today. Hopefully you will. Hopefully you'll download some free resources from our website. Hopefully you'll download some free curriculum and see if that's something that will work for you. We are constantly creating new curriculum. It's essentially, if I had to ballpark kind of what I do day to day, it's probably 60% content development, whether that be curriculum, or forms or different documents that you'll use. Some of those things that I showed you, and it's probably 40% doing free consultations with churches, trainings, that sort of thing. So if there's something on our website that you don't see that you need, don't hesitate to contact us. That's a lot of the ways that we create new resources, especially those one-page documents, forms that you need are because somebody said, "Hey, I'd love to see this." So you don't see something, let me know. We'll put it on our content development list. We have a very, very long content development list, and we just kind of work our process through that. But we have two different curriculum series in development right now. One is on the funniest stories of the Bible, and that's a video-driven series. And we're proud to say that it features an actor with a disability in it. So that's really cool to be able to feature people with disabilities, and especially in the video-driven realm. And then we have a double series on the Beatitudes that we'll be releasing fairly soon. So that's obviously eight lessons long. Most of our series are 4 to 5 lessons long, but Beatitudes is an 8 lesson series. So those have already been filmed and written, and those are just being kind of polished up and edited and will be released soon. We currently have one full year cycle for children in our curriculum. We have about 3.5 years worth of teen and adult curriculum. And I say teen and adult because that curriculum can be used in either of those age groups.
So great. And so great to see representation. That's amazing. I can't wait for that to come out. I'm going to mention Ryan's website, abilityministry.com. We'll also, when we put the recording on our Facebook group, we'll make sure to add that, but abilityministry.com. And then Ryan, another question just came in about curriculum add-ons and if those are for inclusive settings or for respite class.
Curriculum add-ons for inclusive settings. So can, if I'm understanding this correctly, our curriculum can it be used not only in the standalone classroom but in a regular classroom? Absolutely, can be used in both environments. One of the things that I always like to I guess brag about is we have a handful of adults that are those table leaders that I mentioned that are volunteers in our adult ministry. And there's one lady in particular that whenever I teach, and she comes up and she says, "You know what, Ryan? I learn more from these lessons than I do when I go into church." So absolutely, these can be used in an inclusive setting. It can be used for special events like respite as well. So yeah, either or can be used in both of those environments. Oh, and I see another question. Individual churches able to edit the PowerPoint lessons? Yes, yes, yes. When you download our curriculum, we give it to you straight in PowerPoint, so you can add a slide, delete a slide, change a slide. I know again when it comes to the adult content, if you're downloaded a series, you see something in there, you're like, I'm not sure I want to talk on this because, like, for example, lessons from the life of David is another one of our series. Obviously, we're going to talk about David and Bathsheba. We're going to talk about lust, the consequences, of acting out in a way that doesn't honor God sexually. So you can delete that lesson entirely, or you can make it PG rated because we're probably going to present it at more of a PG-13 level. So yeah, you can absolutely change it to fit the needs of your group because our lessons are long. To give you an idea, the PowerPoint driven lessons are probably anywhere from 30 to 50 slides long. It's because we want to give you more than enough content to use for we're assuming hour-long meeting. Some groups have taken those lessons and made 4-week series all into 8-week series because there's enough content to be able to do that. So you can fully customize the PowerPoints that we give you. We also save them as we save them as JPEGs, so you can drop them into ProPresenter if you use ProPresenter in your ministry. All right. Another question looks like it just came through. Is that retention piece why adult helpers are learning more? Probably. Absolutely. Absolutely. Because when they go to hear a sermon, it's 45 minutes of lecture style. And I'll be honest, 5 minutes in, I'm thinking about what I'm having for lunch, or I'm thinking about my fantasy football lineup if it's football season, or I'm, texting snarky things to my friends about what the preacher's wearing, or all the other things that I shouldn't admit to. Right? Any other
Mm,
questions?
goodness, yeah, and feel free, friends, unmute yourself and you can just go ahead and ask the question if you were like.
I have a question, but first I just want to say, Ryan, we've been using your curriculum
Oh,
for
cool.
like 3 years.
Wow.
Fantastic. Love it. Our group loves it, for our adult disability ministry. This time we had them choose between a couple of different ones. And it was kind of split between funny content, more, you have some really funny content and characters and less funny. So it's nice to give them the choice, and yeah, it's been fun to see them engage. We do our adult ministry outside of a Sunday morning.
Okay.
So it's a little bit different. But I'm wondering what your Sunday morning like schedule and timing kind of looks like, with that.
Okay. Obviously every church is different and every church, has a format that fits them. For us at First Christian, what I like to do when I'm leading, I like to obviously give that kind of open space for people to socialize because they need that in the beginning, 5-10 minutes. Then I like to do about 3 songs of worship. There's a couple different ways that you can do that. If your service is live streamed throughout the building, you can tap into that. We have an individual in our ministry. We are blessed by Tim Bailey. He is a musical savant. He can play anything he hears, so he has the entire hymnal memorized. Um, he can't work a microwave, or do some other things, but like he has the hymnal memorized, and you shout out any hymn that you want, and he just boom plays it. So we do live worship, basically 3 songs. I'll do my lesson then, which is the bulk of that time, uh, containing any of the activities and different things that we do within that time. And I always try to leave like 5, 10, 15 minutes sometimes for that prayer time. And you can expand beyond just the 3 prayer prompts that we use in our curriculum, to doing just like open prayer requests. And that prayer time, oftentimes is some of the richest and most rewarding time that we spend together. It's just when we can put our prayer requests on the board, and we can pray for them, and we can circle. I encourage people to take a picture of the prayer requests that you put on the board, circle back to them the next week. Did God answer those prayers? Celebrate those. So that's kind of the format that we use. But there is in those one-page documents, if you download those, sample schedules and recommendations for time frames if you want to look at that as well.
Great. Any other
I have a
questions?
question.
Yeah, go ahead.
I do. And Ryan, I was curious for our kids' programs, a lot of kids with autism, different types of diagnosis, often that aren't diagnosed early on, but it's hard to get parents to actually talk to us about the All About Me form. We used to have a form and ask them to fill it out. Now we interview and just sit down and talk with them, hoping if it doesn't seem like we're trying to pinpoint a label, but we just need to understand how to help it be successful. But that's been tricky in our elementary programs. Do you have any suggestions for how to work with families or really be able to tailor that?
Hmm. One of the things that I think can be a strategy of making it not feel like you're targeting an individual and a family. Every year you probably have a promotion Sunday, whether that's September, August. People do it different times. Um, get that form to everybody instead of just one family. Just say, hey, and again, you might have to tailor it or change it up a little bit, but just say, hey, we just want to make sure um, that we as the ministry and you as parents are working together because we want the same things. And for us to be most successful is we need to have as much information as we can and just make it for everybody. Just say, hey, love for you to take time to fill this out. I mean, you can send that out by email. You could post it on a Facebook private group where people can kind of download it. So many different ways that you could do it, or you can pass it out on, consecutive Sunday mornings and say, hey, we're just looking for everybody to fill this out and get this information so it doesn't feel so targeted. And maybe that's something you do on a routine basis because you'll probably have a lot of the same kids that come every week, but people come and go. And that would be one strategy that I would encourage. But yeah, sometimes you have those kids where something's going on, and probably the parents do too, but they don't always want to, or they haven't maybe come to grasp with the fact that something is going on, and that's not something that they want to kind of embrace or aren't ready to embrace yet. So make it for everybody. That way, it's not singled out on anyone.
Or we've had conversation with this group before as well, that families are coming to us and maybe they've been asked to leave a church prior to attending our churches because they maybe didn't feel like they were equipped or didn't have the supports available for that kiddo. So we experience a lot of times too that families are coming to our church and they're not disclosing that information or not having those conversations because they would be fearful that we're not going to have the supports available for them, or we might ask them to leave. So if that's an element of it too, that's not the whole story, obviously, for every family, but that can be a part of it too. So just building that trust and relationship and connection goes a long way. And
yeah, and I think there've been that it is tough and it is sensitive. Sometimes parents will be like totally on board to the point where they'll be willing to share with you an IEP, so you can see very specific language it supports. That's super helpful, right? If you can be consistent on Sunday morning with what's happening Monday through Friday at school, much better success rate. Obviously, you have to have different supports that would be available to help make those things happen. But if you know what's going on Monday to Friday, Sunday can be easier to be consistent if you're consistent.
Absolutely. So great. Any other questions anyone has here? We can certainly go ahead, Curtis.
First of all, I just want to thank Ryan for sharing all of the good curriculum suggestions that he's been able to do. We appreciate it, Ryan. Carrie, I was wondering if there's a few people are starting to drop off. I wondered if you wanted to just give a summary of maybe what we're going to do, thinking about doing next week or next month.
Yeah.
So that we don't miss that opportunity to share that.
Yes, absolutely. I just want to make sure if anyone had questions, they could get those
Yeah.
questions answered. Otherwise, yeah, we can absolutely move.
And we could swing
move
back to the
on.
questions after that, but yeah.
Oh, sure.
if there's-
Absolutely. Really great. So kind of keeping in line with what we're talking with Ryan about today, and curriculum and adaptations is something that we've been hearing for our group pretty collectively. So grateful and so honored to have Ryan with us today. And so wealth of information, we'll be posting this information later to the remainder of our group. But for next month, one of the other things that we've been hearing quite a bit is within your ministries is hidden disability. So we talked a little bit about today, ADHD. We're seeing a lot of behaviors in our churches. So Curtis and I are working right now in bringing connected families as part of our meeting for next month for April. So we're working at getting Jim and Lynn Jackson, who are co-founders of Connected Families, to our next meeting in person. It will be you don't want to miss this, friends. They are incredible resources. Just talking about sensitivity and hidden disabilities. So yeah, we're working on that, hoping to get that finalized this week. Then we'll get that information out. I would encourage you to invite our leaders in disability ministry, but also tap your children and student pastors or those that work in kids and students as well, because it's just something that we're seeing a lot more of, and they just have such a great, it's all based in faith and just incredible expertise. I'm sorry, you guys. I still just keep hearing myself echo. I'm sorry. I'm all over the place. This cold could just be done and over with. But yeah, so we're working on that. We're hoping to get that finalized here this week, but that will be our presentation for next month in April. April 18th, it will be at Eaglebrook Church at the White Bear Lake campus. And then in May, it will be at Woodbury Lutheran. You know, Jeannie's on the call here today, working with her on setting up the date in May. And we'll do a roundtable discussion as we've done before, where we'll set up some questions and just get really great feedback from our members of what you want to see, what's working, what's not working, what topic suggestions, just all the things. It's a great opportunity for us to network and connect at our tables, and just get really great information and set us up well for next ministry year. Just, we know time is limited, and just be as effective and productive and get the things in your hands that are really going to help you be strong disability ministry leaders at your churches and in our community, supporting our kids and students and families. So yeah, that is what we're working on coming up. So we hope to have that all, like I said, finalized this week and get that information out to you. We'll make sure to post the recording for today too on our Facebook group. Yeah, I think I covered it all, right?
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure
there.
people got
Yeah.
a chance to hear that before they dropped off.
Yes. Yep. Good call. Yeah, go ahead, Andrea.
I have more questions. Two more questions. I'm specifically thinking about adults and with disabilities. And Ryan, you talked about wanting to include people, and we do that as well. In like reading scripture, different things, we have individuals who their speech is very difficult to understand, but we still want to include them. Do you do that in reading scripture, and how do you navigate that well? And then my other question would be, since you do a Sunday morning programming, do you consider that sort of like a Sunday school, or do you sort of consider that a worship service? And then I don't know if you do like adult baptisms, but is that part of that service? Or if an adult wanted to be baptized, is that part of the regular service?
All right, I think I have three questions. First on reading scripture, we give anybody an opportunity to read that wants to read. So like I ask for volunteers, because anytime I have scripture on a screen, I don't read it. I purposely won't read it because I want people in the group to have an opportunity to read it. And I don't let the same person read twice, because there's multiple, scriptures that we go through. So I want multiple people to engage. And we have different people, all different reading levels. Some, with that table leader's assistance kind of whispering in their ears, are able to get through most of the verses. We have a guy stutters a lot, and what might be 2 or 3 sentences might take him a very long time to get through, but that's okay. And some of the individuals that will read but won't get every word read or read well, that's okay too. If you need to kind of help fill in the blanks, that's okay. But yeah, we give everybody an opportunity. And one of the things that I like to do, especially if it's someone that maybe that struggles to get through reading it, let the class cheer for them when they get done reading it. Give that encouragement. That's something that we always do. Is also always say, "Hey, thank you for reading that. You did a great job," and just have people clap for it. I think that's a great way to do that. I think second question was, do you view it as like a class or worship service? Yes. It is interesting when you look at the array of people. There are some people that will come to drop their adult children off to our adult class, and then they'll go to their church, or they'll come drop their adult children off to our class, hang out in the cafe, and then after our class is over, they go to their church because they don't have anything. There are some people that will only come for our class, and it does, because we do worship and prayer. It does feel kind of more like a church service. We don't always do worship, but I always like to have that element as a part of what we do. So yes, is the answer to that question. Question 3 was baptism. Is that a part of the class or is that part of the service? Anybody that's come forward in our class showed interest in baptism. We have them work through our baptism decision workbook. It's something that you can get on our website. Once they have worked through that, we meet with them, make sure everybody's on the same page, understands everything, or answer any questions. And then yes, it happens in the worship service. There have been a few situations where individuals haven't felt comfortable because in a worship, class, you've got 80 to 100 people. Worship service, you've got several hundreds, and it's a whole different environment. Bright lights, warm water. Hopefully, sometimes it's very cold water. So a lot of different sensory things going on. That's probably not always good for everybody. So there have been situations where we'll do a baptism in between services when just our class goes over. So it's more based on the individual. But I think there's importance in doing that corporately as a body because the whole church needs to see our friends and needs to celebrate our friends, and they have an opportunity to minister to the whole church when they can do that, if they choose to do that, if they can do that, with all the different sensory things that happen in a baptism. So great questions.
Amen. That's so good. Like I mentioned before, make sure that you go to Ryan's website, abilityministry.com. Check out there's just incredible resources. I mean, he touched on quite a few today, but there's just a plethora of information. Follow abilityministry.com, go to the website, follow him on social media. Just it's a great opportunity to go around and present to different churches and around the country. And I'm just so grateful for the technology, honestly, Ryan, and your experience and expertise and just sharing a little bit with us today. And we just kind of scratched the surface of all the years of experience that you have, but just such a great presentation. We're so honored to have had you with us today. We're going to move into time of asking for prayer requests and upcoming events. So Ryan, just respectful of your time, if you want to jump off, you're welcome to stay the whole time too to finish up this last bit. But if you want to jump off, I do want to ask though before, if you do decide to jump off, if there are any things that we can be praying for you, either personally or for your team, any prayer requests on your end, I'd love to be praying for you, and your team and your organization too.
Yeah. One of the things that we do outside of helping churches is we provide homes for adults with intellectual developmental disabilities. We have a residential ministry. That becomes increasingly difficult with rising cost of everything, inflation, staff wages. So yeah, I just say a prayer for our fundraising efforts to be able to continue to provide that in the way that we want to, at a level of excellence that we want to. And then just for travels, I'll be speaking at the D6 conference first week of April. And then I'll be at the Disability in the Church conference I think that's the first week of May. So be going down to Florida twice for those conferences. So just prayers over that, that God would give me the right words to say to the right people that need to hear them.
Yes, that's wonderful. We would love to be praying for those things for you. And I know that we have several of our team, our collaborative churches that are going to the Disability in the Church conference in May. So you may see some faces that you recognize on the screen here that will be in person
Awesome.
that time too. So wonderful.
Thank you all.
Thank you so much. Yes, thank you, Ryan. It was a pleasure.